prawns. Currently, there are more than 300 aquatic species, making the country the most diversified country in the world in terms of farmed species. China also takes the lead in application of innovative technologies in the aquaculture industry, such as a multi-trophic level aquaculture, development and promotion of pond and factory circulating aquaculture, and deep sea aquaculture. The contribution rate of technology reaches 36%. The output value of the secondary and tertiary fisheries and aquaculture industries accounts for more than 50%. Last year, per capita net income of fisher folks and fisher farmers reached 21,837 yuan. The third is to accelerate the transformation of the aquaculture sector towards a sustainable and green industry. The plan for zoning of aquaculture waters and the tidal flats was compiled and promulgated, and 23.33 million hectares of aquaculture areas were delineated, optimizing the layout of aquaculture in offshore areas, lakes, and reservoirs, developing large-scale ecological fisheries and marine pastures, and strengthening the conservation of the ecological environment of the waters. The cultivation area of rice fish, rice shrimp, and rice crab was promulgated to 2.53 million hectares, and the amount of chemical fertilizers and pesticides was generally reduced by more than 30% compared with the traditional planting methods. Fourth, international cooperation continues to deepen and to make aquaculture an open industry that is mutually beneficial with countries from all over the world. Aquatic products are exported to 193 countries and regions. In 2020, the import and export value reached $31.6 billion. China has become the world's largest aquatic product processing and trading market. Aquaculture is also one of the areas that China extensively participates in the South-South and Triangular Cooperation. It sent nearly 200 experts to more than 40 countries as technical consultants and trained more than 2,000 professionals for more than 50 countries. At present, the COVID pandemic is sweeping across the world, extreme weather recurring more frequently, and the number of hungry people is rising sharply. In this context, we must put aquaculture in a more important position. Through deepening cooperation and joint efforts for all players, we will promote the development of aquatic product production, processing, distribution, and trade throughout the value chain so that people from all over the world can enjoy sufficient, high quality, and diverse aquatic products. Here, I would like to put forward 3 suggestions. First, insist on innovation-driven aquaculture and strengthen technical support to aquaculture, strengthen research and development and promotion of new species, new technologies, and new models of aquaculture, and promote scientific and technological exchanges and personnel training in the framework of South-South cooperation mechanism of the FAO. China, with the FAO, will jointly launch the Global Sustainable Aquaculture Advancement Partnership. All parties are welcome to actively participate in this partnership and deepen multilateral cooperation in aquaculture research and industry. Second, uphold green transformation and promote sustainable development. Committed to the development of environmentally friendly aquaculture, improve facilities and equipment, and increase standards of sewage discharged from aquaculture, and give full play to the role of shell algae cultivation in helping carbon neutrality. China is willing to actively share experience in the transformation and development of aquaculture, promote mature technology models such as integrated rice fishing and ecological pond farming, and with countries around the world to jointly improve the sustainable development of global aquaculture. Third, adhere to the principle of mutual benefit and expand the trade and investment, facilitate mutual recognition of inspections and the quarantine standards and the traceability systems with various countries, reduce unreasonable import and export restrictions, and build a smooth and mutually beneficial international industry chain and supply chain to make aquatic product trade and investment more convenient. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tang Renjian's speech. Our next speaker is the distinguished Frank Tomvibat, Minister for Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, and Mrs. Wusra Duru from Peru, and Mr. Virginius Sinkvincius from European Commission. Let's welcome their speech.
Your Excellency, the Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, Your Excellency Tang Renjian, the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Affairs of the People's Republic of China, Your Excellency Mr. Li Qiang, the Secretary of Shanghai Municipal Committee of the Communist Party of China, CPC, the Honorable Ministers and Vice Ministers, Diplomatic Envoy, ladies and gentlemen, greetings to you from His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the President of Uganda, and I also bring you warm greetings from the people of Uganda. Uganda is the part of Africa, and I invite you to visit Uganda and experience the warmth of our land and of our people. We are connected here today from different continents and cultures for aquaculture for food and sustainable development, a true representation of the resolve of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the network of aquaculture centers in the Asia Pacific with the Chinese Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs to bring stakeholders from government, business, academia, and civil society together to identify policy and technology innovations, investment opportunities, and fruitful areas of cooperation. Fish and other aquatic products can and will play a major role in meeting the dietary and food security demands of all people. Coordinated and accelerated actions, therefore, to engage farmers, food processors, traders, researchers, technical experts, leaders world over to address issues of market access, competitiveness, communication gaps, experience and information sharing, and training of personnel of the aquaculture sector will foster sustainable development. In this context, the role of national, regional, and international cooperation can be overemphasized. Therefore, this interaction is welcome. Uganda produces up to 120,000 tons of fish annually from small-scale fish farmers, from emerging commercial fish farmers, and stocked community water reservoirs and minor lakes. Aquaculture production in Uganda has been growing steadily at an annual rate of 30% over the last 10 years. Where aquaculture has significant potential to contribute to our ambition for a steady economic growth and poverty reduction as per SDG 1, ending hunger and all forms of malnutrition, which is SDG 2, the yields in sub-Saharan Africa remain very low compared to global averages due to several challenges. These challenges are in areas of feed, seed quality, production systems, knowledge and skills that require us to harness the power of science, technology, and innovation to transform aquaculture to sustainably increase our production levels, to feed ourselves, to feed the region and global markets, and generate incomes for people's livelihoods. Uganda and Africa at large have been for a long time looking for a partner who comes in a mutually beneficial partnership that can help Africa transform its aquaculture to be a force of food security and income generation, hence economic growth. Our hope is that the South-South Conference in the field of sustainable aquaculture will be the enabler in this cause. In the pursuance of our goals and objectives, however, the emphasis should be put also on following a sustainable approach through green development, integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, and FAO's hand-in-hand initiative. I also take this opportunity on behalf of the government of Uganda and the people of Uganda to invite you, through your governments, investors in this sector. The potential of the fish maw is unexploited in Uganda. This is an area where investors can come and exploit and be able to set up factories threads used in theaters and in stitching operated people. So this is an area you can definitely have a very, very good competitive advantage if you came and invested in our aquaculture sector. In Africa, we say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So with this and more cooperation and support, growth and sustained development in the aquaculture sector is set to go both fast and far. I thank you for listening to me, Your Excellencies.
Distinguidos invitados, delegados.
Distinguished guests, delegates, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. The Global Conference on Aquaculture Plus 20 this year features the theme Aquaculture for Food and Sustainable Development. And this is an event that has brought together representatives of governments, businesses, academia, and civil society, whose task it is to identify the policies and innovative technologies, the opportunities for investments, and areas of cooperation in aquaculture. Before I present you with the advances made by Peru in this area, I'd like to reflect on the current crisis brought about by COVID-19, which has consequences that are disproportionate in the low-income vulnerable households, in particular in developing countries, where unemployment has soared considerably and where the networks of food security are rather scanty, and it is therefore necessary to strengthen certain areas of productive development like aquaculture and foster a system of trade that will be sustainable, fair, and inclusive in order to maximize a positive contribution to the recovery after the crisis. Now, of course, bold measures will be required on the part of national governments as well as the global community that will enable people to enjoy access to safe and healthy food. And this means that we're going to have to redirect our efforts in order to achieve the SDGs 2030. The declaration in favor of sustainable fisheries and aquaculture that was approved at the 34th session of the Fisheries Committee of FAO in February of this year had the goal of recognizing the achievements made in this sector since the approval of the Code of Conduct for Sustainable Fisheries. Moreover, it highlights the huge potential for growth of aquaculture for many regions, in particular, if we do adopt innovative measures that will guarantee environmental management, as well as benefits of inclusive sustainable development programs, with a special focus on the regions whose population growth will pose greater problems to food systems. In this context, Peru has prioritized the development of sustainable aquaculture, and we're right now defining the instruments that will make it possible to strengthen this growth as a source that will generate food, employment, jobs, and currency for the country. In this context, we've developed a national aquaculture policy with a broad public and private participatory process and the support of FAO in the first phase of its formulation. With this national policy, we will contribute to a sustainable, competitive, and resilient aquaculture. Thus, we have felt it necessary to strengthen the competitiveness and sustainability of small-scale aquaculture practitioners because they account for 98% of total users, and most of them just don't have enough capacity, skills, or they have unmet technological needs. With the support of FAO, we have developed the National Aquaculture Strategy that will make it possible to build and strengthen capacities and skills for small-scale practitioners with a focus on self-management, empowerment, and sustainable development. We've also created the first certification standard called Sustainable Aquaculture, and this in order to promote development in this industry in keeping with the conservation conservation of environmental resources. Equally, technological development and innovation are very important pillars on our way to sustainable development. This is why, through the National Program of Innovation in Fisheries and Aquaculture, we finance small, medium, and large-scale producers who are interested in innovating in the sector with a sustainable approach. Finally, I wish to express the recognition or the acknowledgement and gratitude of Peru on its bicentenary, to FAO, to the network of aquaculture centers in Asia Pacific, and to the Ministry for Agriculture and Rural Affairs of China for organizing this global conference on aquaculture, Millennium Plus 20. Thank you.
Bicentenario 2021. Gobierno del Perú.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to address this distinguished audience today through this video message. I would have wished to have the opportunity to meet in person with other speakers and participants in this conference that only takes place every 10 years. I am particularly pleased to address this message to you since the European Commission adopted before the summer a new strategy for the future development of the aquaculture sector in the EU in this decade. Even if this strategy takes into consideration the reality of aquaculture in Europe, it addresses many of the issues that are common to the development of aquaculture more globally. We all know that we have little time to bring in the radical transformation that we need in order to achieve the goals of the 2030 agenda and the sustainable development goals. The next 10 years will also be crucial in addressing the impact of the climate crisis and avoid irremediable damage to the environment. Taking immediate and decisive action to build more sustainable food systems is an essential part of that transformation. This is what world leaders and stakeholders are discussing today at the UN Food Systems Summit. Fortunately, they need to ensure sustainable and resilient aquatic food systems for the necessary transformation of global food systems is increasingly recognized. Aquatic food production needs to be part of the solution. This will require sustainable fisheries, but a significant increase in aquatic food production will have to rely mostly on aquaculture growth. The continued and sustainable growth of aquaculture is therefore part of what is needed to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Aquaculture, when managed in a sustainable manner, offers an enormous potential to contribute to the big challenges that we face today. Aquaculture can be a source of nutritious food with lower carbon and environmental footprint than other forms of food production. It also has a broad potential for diversification and growth. For example, mollusks and seaweed need very little input to grow. Despite this, their big potential to support global nutritional security is largely unexploited. Aquaculture also has a big potential to create new economic activity and sources of income when synergies with other activities and industries are developed. We have seen in many countries the benefits that the combination of farming of fish and rice can offer in terms of food security and livelihoods. Using algae or other byproducts of aquaculture for other industries such as feed, pharmaceuticals, or fertilizers can also offer new opportunities. Some forms of aquaculture production also offer important ecosystem services and contribute to climate change mitigation and adaptation. The EU Agenda for Green Growth and the EU Strategy towards Sustainable Food Systems, called the Farm to Fork Strategy, recognizes the potential of aquaculture and calls for an accelerated shift towards sustainable fish and seafood production. The new strategy for EU aquaculture aims at implementing that shift. For aquaculture to live up to its promise, we need to ensure that the global development of aquaculture production and related value chains is more equitable and sustainable. We all know that our health is inextricably linked to that of our planet. Aquaculture growth needs to be done in a way that is environmentally sustainable in order to ensure that it is part of the solution and not of the problem. We also need to ensure that aquaculture provides food security and nutrition to all and provide a source of income to those most vulnerable. This requires clear strategies and effective and coherent policies, but also strengthened partnership among different stakeholders, public authorities, aquaculture producers, NGOs, researchers, investors, citizens, and consumers. We all have our role to play. The themes being discussed at this conference are all very relevant for the challenge ahead for global aquaculture. I hope that this conference will inspire all relevant actors to adopt concrete and actionable solutions to ensure that the development of global aquaculture in the present decade contributes to the achievement of the 2030 SDGs. Supporting this sustainable path is part of the commitments of the European Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy of the European Union. In terms of concrete steps at global level, I would like to stress the importance of further progress towards the development of comprehensive and ambitious FAO guidelines for sustainable aquaculture, which we hope will see the light in 2022. The EU will continue its contribution to the valuable work of the FAO in developing these guidelines and its cooperation with developing countries. I end by wishing all participants a rich and fruitful discussions and thanking the hosts and organizers of this conference for their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your speech. Our next speaker is Dr. Huang, Director General of the Network of Aquaculture Centers in Asia Pacific, NACA. NACA is a co-organizer of this conference. So let's welcome Dr. Huang Jie, again, the Director General of NACA. Please welcome.
Thank you, Vice Minister Ma, Your Excellencies, Director General Chu, Minister Tang, Minister Tumwebeits, Vice Minister Chen, Commissioner Think Wishes, Vice Mayor Peng, distinguished speakers, panelists, audience, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. Representing the network of aquaculture centers in Asia Pacific and as one of the co-chairs of the International Organization Committee of the conference, I'm delighted to take great honor to welcome all of you to the Global Conference on Aquaculture Millennium +20. NACA sincerely appreciates FAO and the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs of China for co-organizing the GCA +20. As the Vice Minister Ma introduced, NACA has been involved in the co-organizing of this conference. Actually, NACA was born and developed along with the series of the global conferences on aquaculture. In 1976, FAO held the first event of this conference series, the FAO Technical Conference on Aquaculture in Kyoto, Japan. The Kyoto Strategy for Aquaculture Development announced that aquaculture was transforming from a traditional to a science-based economic activity. Furthermore, the strategy promoted aquaculture technical cooperation among developing countries. In the year of the conference, FAO and the UNDP started a project with the same name of NACA to promote technical cooperation in aquaculture in Asia Pacific. Through 2 rounds of the project, participating countries have experienced significant benefits in aquaculture development. Therefore, under the mediation of FAO, governments signed the NACA agreement and formally empowered NACA as a regional intergovernmental organization in 1990. NACA is proud to work subsequently with FAO and the Thai government to co-organize the second and the third previous global conferences on aquaculture in 2000 and 2010. As the outputs from the conferences, the Bangkok Declaration and the Phuket Consensus further demonstrated the promotive role of regional and global cooperation for aquaculture development. Over the last 3 decades, in cooperation with member governments and international organizations such as FAO, NACA has assisted members in developing sustainable aquaculture to alleviate poverty, enhance food security, maintain the integrity of national resources and the environment, and respond to emergencies such as climate change, emerging diseases, and the impact of COVID-19. Furthermore, the network has cultivated large pool of aquaculture human resources for developing countries in the region. From 1976 to 2019, the regional aquaculture production in Asia and the Pacific increased more than 23 times, with an average annual growth rate of 7.6% in 43 years. As remarked by FAO Director General and distinguished speakers, aquaculture in the coming decades face the challenges of sustainable development and coordination with the agri-food system to supply more than 60% of the global demand for aquatic products and maintain equitable growth and fair distribution. The conference will take on a key event in finding solutions to the challenges and play its role in achieving the 2030 SDG of the United Nations. NACA expects that the outputs of the conference will chart the course for meeting the challenges. Again, take this opportunity. NACA sincerely thanks the cooperation from the co-organizers of the conference and the supports from FAO, member governments, partners, and the aquaculture stakeholders. I'm looking forward to the complete success of the conference. Thank you.
Thank
you, Mr. Huang, for your remarks. This meeting actually is convened in Shanghai. We have gained support from Shanghai municipal government. So I'd like to invite Mr. Peng Chen-lei to make an opening speech. Mr. Peng, you have the floor. Director General Chu Dongyu, Director General Huang Jie, Vice Minister Ma Youxiang, Deputy Director Li Chunshen, distinguished guests and friends. Let me start by expressing my warm congratulations on behalf of Shanghai Municipal Government on the convening of the 4th Global Conference on Aquaculture. I'd like to extend my warm welcome to distinguished participants at home and from abroad, and my sincere gratitude to people from all walks of life who have for a long time been supporting the development of Shanghai. The world's population has been increasing and the people's life standards have been improving. In this context, the demand for aquatic products will continue to increase as well. Given that the natural fishery resources are increasingly getting scarce, it will be imperative for the future development of fisheries and the supply of aquatic products to be largely dependent on aquaculture. I believe that the convening of this conference will pull together wisdom and insight which will be contributed by visionary people from all over the world. And this will play an active role in promoting the sustainable development of global aquaculture, as well as accelerating international trade in aquatic products and integration of global elements. All this will help us to achieve complementarity, cooperation, and a win-win, which will be a greater contribution to well-being of people all over the world. Shanghai is a modern international metropolis which was born and has been thriving based on water resources. In recent years, Shanghai has been active in developing its aquaculture systems aligned with megacity, and as a result, aquaculture has become a specialty sector in Shanghai's agriculture. We will take the opportunity provided by this conference to strengthen our close linkage with the FAO and other international organizations, deepen international collaboration and exchanges in aquaculture, improve capabilities and levels in technological innovation, and make our due contribution to the quality and green development of aquaculture. To conclude, may the conference be a complete success. Thank you all. Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, in line with the conference agenda, this brings us to the end of our opening session. The next session will be moderated by Ms. Jennifer Coppercroft. You are welcome to continue to take part. Thank you very much.
Greetings everybody. I'm Jennifer Cobcroft, and I'm honoured to be the moderator for the next session at such an important occasion. So interpretation is available for our listeners online, our delegates online, in several languages, and it can be selected in the bottom bar. Our first keynote is from Professor Tang Sheng of the Chinese Academy of Fisheries Science on the contribution of aquaculture to China's sustainable future. Professor Tang, please share your screen and you have the floor.
Mr. Chu Dongyu, Vice Minister Ma, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, afternoon, and evening. The topic of my presentation is sustainability of aquaculture in China, past and the future. I'm glad to know that we have a common development purpose, which includes sustainable development, food security, and quality and green development. Since 2009, the Chinese Academy of Engineering has organized a number of strategic studies on the sustainable development of aquaculture and produced a series of reports with the keywords being sustainability, carbon sink, fisheries, environmentally friendly, etc. And green development is one of the key words as well. So in my presentation today, I will take reference from the following sources. My presentation consists of the following aspects. Firstly, the substantial contribution of aquaculture to China. So we can see 4 groups of data here, which show the changes in China's fisheries and aquaculture. The first one is the changes in total fisheries production. So you can see that in 1950, it's less than 1 million tons, but now, and our production accounts for nearly 1/3 of the total of the world. So it has contributed to the market supply and income for farmers. The second changes lies in per capita production of seafood. In 1950, the percentage was only 20%, but now, and it's nearly 2-fold of the world average. So it means that it has provided high quality protein and guaranteed nutritional safety. The third group of changes lies in the production of aquaculture and the capsule fisheries. Before 1985, the production was very small, but nowadays, the aquaculture to capture ratio has changed dramatically. And in China, so the former accounts for 80%, while the latter 20%, and globally it's 50-50. In this respect, what we have done has promoted the transformation of modern fishery growth mode industrial structure. It has not only made a contribution to China, but also the world. The fourth group of changes lies in the CO2 emission reduction. The farming of shellfish, filter feeders, and seaweeds has a significant carbon sink function that help us to reduce 3.5 million tons of carbon emissions, which is equivalent to the effect of over 1.5 million hectares of artificial afforestation. So its contributions lie in reduced carbon dioxide emission. The second part of my speech is the driving force for the fast development of aquaculture in China. So what are the reasons for our success? So the first one is we have strong driving force, which can be reflected in the following aspects: advanced mental preparation, solid technological support, correct development decisions, and clear strategies. First aspect, advanced mental preparation. In 1985, among the decision makers, there was a debate which contributed to the following result. That is, in 1958, Gao Wenhua, the vice minister in charge of Ministry of Fisheries, published an article in Red Flag magazine and initiated discussion about it's farming or fishing. This discussion overturned the traditional mode of fishery development and guided the new development of aquaculture. As a result, China became the first country in the world to realize that aquaculture actually could play a very important role. Second, solid technological support. In the last century, that is in the 1950s, our scientists actually were engaged in the work in this respect. For example, in 1958, Professor Zhong Ling and his team made breakthroughs in the artificial propagation. propagation of the 4 main domesticated fisheries. At the very beginning, I gave you the sources of my reference for my speech. Actually, those most of the books were published in 1950s. Large-scale aquaculture technology has promoted widespread development of aquaculture, and it provides more than 90% of farmed aquatic products for China and the world. So over the recent 2 decades, large-scale aquaculture has made a great improvement in the following aspects. The first is the development of over 240 new farmed types. Secondly, the wider application of various eco-farming modes, such as IIFA and IMTA as well. Besides, the fundamental research has made notable achievements in China. Its amount of technological outputs in aquatic products actually accounts for more than 40% of the world. And so on this slide, we can see the aquaculture genome technologies in China. And since 2002, more than 30 fish genomes have been sequenced. And we also ranked the top in terms of the publication of IF articles. So in developing aquaculture, the base science research has gained a due attention. So the third aspect, correct development decision. From 1978 to 1980, in order to solve the difficulty in providing enough fish for people, the government made serious discussions. And Mr. Deng Xiaoping, the general architect for China's reform and the opening up, once instructed that this is a policy issue for fisheries. So you can see it seems that it has been linked with the discussions we made in the 1950s. So in 1985, the State Council issued a decree on reform of fisheries. And so the focus will be on the preservation. So the aquaculture primary development policy has brought a great driving force for fisheries in China. In 2016 State of World Fisheries and Aquaculture published by FAO, we can see that a quotation that a milestone was reached in 2014 when the aquaculture sector's contribution to the supply of fish for human consumption overtook that of wild caught fish, and among which China actually has played a very major contribution. So here you can see the clear development concepts. In terms of development path, in the late 1980s, with the rapid development of aquaculture, freshwater, and marine cultural diseases broke out one after another. But in this process, the concept of a healthy aquaculture has been born or has been emerging. In the mid-1990s, with the introduction of new research methods, more comprehensive and systematic quantitative studies were carried out in the coastal waters of China. Polyculture was developed, which also leads to extensive exploitation of ecological aquaculture. And entering this century, aquaculture has become the mainstay of fisheries. The cultivation of improved varieties has also received great attention, and the direction of green development has been mapped. In terms of scientific and technology innovation, with the support of the National Key Basic Research Program, new concepts, new goals, and new modes have been proposed. So in terms of new development concept, the focus is on carbon sink fisheries. It is the concrete embodiment of the green development concept in the fishery field, which can better demonstrate the two functions of fishery, that is food supply and the ecology services, and this will bring a multi-wing effect. And we actually compare the farming and livestock. And consequently, we propose the Sustainable Development Goal, which is focusing on high efficiency, high quality, ecology, health, and safety. So we have also developed the new development modes as well. So regarding state decisions, entering this century, stock conservation, ecology priority, and sustainability has become the key words. In 2017 was the support of academician, the former mayor of Shanghai, and the former president of CAE. Field experts proposed the suggestions on the green development of aquaculture.
In 2019, with the approval of the State Council of China, MARA of China, and other 9 ministries jointly issued several opinions on accelerating the green development of aquaculture. This document becomes a programmatic document guiding the green development of China's aquaculture at present and for a certain period of time in the future. Third part is the green and high-quality development and the future of aquaculture in China. First, we should see the basic status of China's aquaculture production structure, planning the foundation for the future. According to FAO, we have analyzed the data from FAO compared with other major aquaculture countries in the world. Its species structure is significantly characterized by rich species diversity, significant dominant species, multiple trophic levels, low trophic level, high eco-efficiency, and high biomass output. At the same time, we have seen the characteristics of the Chinese aquaculture. As you can see, we can see that 6 main species respectively contributed 70% of marine or freshwater aquaculture products. Mariculture is dominated by shellfish and algae, and freshwater by filter feeding and omnivorous fishes. Another feature is that the nutrition pyramid consists of 4 levels, with 2 as the main levels. The trophic level in mariculture is 2.10 and 2.35 in freshwater. This is a research in 2014. It is a system with high biomass production. So that is the situation in the Chinese aquaculture production structure. Let's see the output structure, which is based on species. The feature is a relative stability, and this will not undergo major changes in the future. These charts suggest that the output structure is very stable, and it is unlikely that there will be major changes in the future. We can see changes in mariculture production by species group. This is on the left, and on the right, these are the changes in freshwater culture production by species group. We have examples in 2005, 2010, 2015, and 2020. We see that in mariculture and in freshwater culture, the difference is not so big. And we see that green and high-quality development is both the present and the future of China's fisheries. It will broaden the way for fisheries, bringing more dynamics to the 5 major fishery industries and the integration of the tertiary industries and making greater contributions to China and the world. The most important thing is to build an environmentally friendly aquaculture and the implement of farming, carrying capacity planning and a management system. So these are our visions for the future of China's aquaculture. We have a lot of things to do. Or we can say that in the past, we have not done enough. We need to implement major measures to implement the construction and the management of green and high-quality aquaculture development today. We need to improve the level of evaluation system, management system, and the new production model. We need to improve the law enforcement over aquaculture governance, solving the contraction between aquaculture development and ecological environment protection, and implementing green and high-quality development is a very difficult management and science task that requires unremitting struggle and hard work. That is the only way to realize our objectives. But this is not impossible. We just need to double our efforts. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Tang. Our next speaker is Devin Bartley, a Senior Research Associate with the World Fisheries Trust and the Robin Welcome Fellow of Michigan State University. Devin will share a summary of the global synthesis of the state of the world aquaculture. Devin, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm just sharing my screen now. And I wish everyone greetings. Greetings from California. I'm very pleased to present to you a global synthesis of Aquaculture 2020. As I said, it's a global synthesis with many data sources, a lot of FAO and UN information, FAO databases, the FAO State of World Fisheries and Aquaculture, and most importantly, FAO staff. But the main data sources are actually the individual authors of the individual regional reviews. And I hope that you will have the chance to see their presentations and to read those reviews, because it's a much more comprehensive coverage of the information that I'm synthesizing here for you in the next few minutes. I'm presenting key messages, and these will be in orange at the top of my slide. And the first key message, I think we've seen in the previous speakers, aquaculture continues to grow. If you look at this graph over here on the right, you'll see the blue bars are aquaculture production that has steadily increased over the last decades. The orange bars are capture fisheries production, which has plateaued over that same period of time. You also see the gray line that shows aquaculture's contribution to seafood consumption, and that now is greater than 50%. 2018, the last year we have complete data for, was a record year for aquaculture production. Over 114 million tons were produced, valued at over $260 billion. That included 82 million tons of aquatic animals, 32 million tons of aquatic plants. Asia, not surprisingly from what we've just heard, continues to be the top producer, and developing countries overall continue to produce the majority of farmed aquatic species. There are a few developed countries that continue to be strong producers. And in some areas, for example, Northern America, Oceania, production has leveled off, but there are policies in place to help the industry grow. Now, options for the way ahead, I'm hoping that you will see those options in the following slides. The next key message is aquaculture is one of the most diverse, if not the most diverse, food producing sectors. Farming systems include cages, ponds, raceways, intensive recirculating to low input extensive systems with both large and small scale operations. The environments and habitats range from temperate or even subarctic oceans to tropical rice fields. The world farms around 466 species or species items composed of fish, mollusks, crustaceans, echinoderms, vascular plants, seaweeds, and even microorganisms. There's newer systems coming on board, such as aquaponics and biofloc, and these show great promise in certain areas. We do have to balance the large and small scale producers. Looking at the way ahead, we have to examine diversification because it's not an endpoint in itself. It's not a goal, but it should be appropriately maintained to ensure systems fit the local conditions, local markets, and produce a resilient sector. Large and small scale aquaculture should be treated equitably by governments and international development communities. Innovation is happening in aquaculture and should continue. Disease diagnosis and treatment are improving. The use of antibiotics is being reduced. Genetic technologies exist, but they are not being fully utilized in all areas. There's innovation in farming systems, such as recirculating systems, and multi-trophic level aquaculture shows promise. However, there are problems in some areas when you have to produce and market multiple products. We've heard earlier today, bivalve and seaweed farming are performing ecosystem services in addition to a valuable product in the form of carbon capture and coastal protection. We have to make sure that these innovations are available to the small scale producers, however. Options for the way ahead, improve local capacity building and technology transfer, assist those small scale operators from accessing innovation. Examine the ecosystem benefits of aquaculture and don't oversell this. It does have promise, but we can't promise too much. We have to promote the realistic advantages of new technologies, and probably most important, don't abandon proven technologies for the new flavor of the month. Aquaculture, I said, was diverse. It's also diverse. That is, it's not homogeneous globally, nor is it homogeneous within regions. If we look at this graph on the right with all the colored lines, we see the lower two lines, which is Oceania and Northern America, where aquaculture production has stabilized. The growing lines in other regions show that aquaculture is increasing. Asia, primarily China, is the top producing region. And it's such a strong producer that to get it on the same graph, we have to use different axes. If we look at the lower graph, the bar graph, within regions, we see a tremendous diversity as well. So on the left, we see China and Lao People's Democratic Republic. And to get those two countries on the same graph, we have to use a logarithmic scale. Just looking at Europe for another example, we see Norway and Germany, where Norway produces orders of magnitude more product than Germany. What is working or what works for China might not work for Lao PDR. What works in Norway might not work at this time in Germany. Aquaculture provides advantages to areas that have the resources and capacity to develop and manage the sector, and that prioritize aquaculture as a user of land and other resources. Looking ahead, we have to look at regional approaches in a regional cooperation and harmonization framework. Aquaculture also produces a diversity of products. Regions combine high and low value species to enhance efficiency. Aquaculture value has risen from $52 billion in 2000 to over $260 billion in 2018. The 5 species with the highest value are white lake shrimp, Atlantic salmon, grass carp, silver carp, and red swamp crayfish. Seaweeds and many freshwater species often command a lower unit price for different markets. If we look at this table over here on the right, we see these are the top 5 species farmed in each region. And we see a combination of species that each region has prioritized. Asia, as we heard earlier, farms lower trophic level species. Oceania farms more higher value species that are usually marine. Latin America farms species primarily for export. We have to match products with local objectives and local preferences, and usually that involves a trade-off between producing product for food security or for export. Aquaculture is an efficient user of fish and aquafeeds. Many reviews noted the benefits of good feed, whether it's locally produced or imported. Now, there has been criticism of feeding fish to fish. Some people think that we should be feeding fish to people. If we look at this graph on the right, however, we see the blue lines at the bottom is the non-food uses of fish production. And you see that that's been rather stable and even decreased recently. If we look at the black bars, we see that's food production, and that is increasing steadily. If we look at the green line, that's human population, which also is increasing. We look at the red line, that's aquaculture's, or excuse me, that's consumption. And we see that both consumption and food production has increased faster than human population growth. Over the last several decades, it's been rather stable of using about 5 million tons of forage fish in the production of fish feeds. The percentage of fish in those feeds has been reduced. They are finding land-based replacements for fish, all except for the key ingredient of fish oil. You still need fish to produce fish oil. The other issue is that the footprint, the ecological and the social footprint of land-based fish replacements has not been adequately assessed. Now, moving ahead, we have to continue and encourage the development of good aquafeeds, perhaps produced at a sub-regional or local levels. Efforts are way to replace, as I said, fish in aquafeeds, but this should not unduly impact the responsible use of fish from those forage fisheries. That's a viable fishery in many parts of the world. And then we have to analyze the trade-offs between replacing fish in those diets and using fish, and then communicate the results of those studies. Aquaculture can and should provide decent employment. There's over 20 million people employed in global aquaculture. Aquaculture in the post-harvest sector provide opportunities in many areas where other options aren't available. Women play a key role. And although there are more in absolute numbers of women working in capture fisheries, there's a higher percentage of women working in aquaculture. Some regions did report problems in regards to workers' rights, occupational safety and health, and access to resources and value chains. Looking ahead, we have to implement aquaculture as a provider of decent employment, especially in those areas where other options are scarce. We have to examine women's role in the value chain and implement policies to support that role. We have to promote aquaculture as a means to provide opportunities and to provide empowerment for women. We need to continue to ensure that human rights and workers' rights and gender access are all included in aquaculture development plans, and we have to establish policies to ensure workers' health and safety. Trade in aquaculture products is important. It's diverse within and among regions, but it needs better information. Seafood is one of the world's largest traded commodities. Europe and the USA must import fish and fish products to meet consumer demands. Sub-Saharan Africa, most fish are produced and consumed within the region. However, several farm species are imported from abroad. In Latin America, the majority of aquaculture products are exported. There's an increasing demand for convenience, frozen and prepackaged foods, for example, in Europe and Northern America. In the Near East and North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, aquaculture products are marketed fresh, unprocessed, with little or no value adding. All regions reported that trade statistics are incomplete and usually fail to distinguish farmed from captured product. Looking ahead, we need to enhance access to mechanisms that help provide accurate information to policymakers and consumers, especially in regard to distinguishing between captured products and farmed products. We need to encourage access to new, new information technology to increase the flow and accuracy of that information. And we have to examine and promote the benefits of value adding where that may be important. Market tools to promote sustainability have potential, but more is needed. Trade requirements, eco-labeling, certification schemes, these are all tools to promote environmental and social benefits, but are they effective? In some areas, aquaculture certification commands a higher price, and that price is increasing, but more information from around the world is needed. The extra price commanded by some products, for example, in Europe, consumers are willing to pay more for certified salmon, whereas consumers are not willing to pay more for certified carp. Now, there is concern that these requirements, while very good in principle, will impact smallholder aquaculturists and developing areas by denying them access to lucrative markets. Looking ahead, we need to promote international guidelines. And luckily, FAO has produced aquaculture certification guidelines, as have other various marketing schemes and eco-labeling schemes. We need to conduct market and consumer studies to examine critically the efficacy and impact of certification and eco-labeling. Is it having the impact on the environment and in society that we think it should have? And we need to develop mechanisms to ensure smallholders are not adversely impacted. Aquaculture produces nutritious and safe food and should emphasize human, environmental, and organismal health. FAO has defined food security as available food, accessible food, food that is utilizable, and that has a stable supply of food. And aquaculture is providing a steady and affordable supply of farmed fish that is often difficult for capture fisheries to supply, and all regions reported this. Aquaculture can meet the criteria for food security in many cases better than capture fisheries. However, several reviews and recent studies indicated that aquaculture products, which are often these nice fillets that you see at the top right of larger fish, are not providing the nutrition, complete nutrition at local levels. You can see from that fish that when you eat the whole fish, you get a wide range of nutrients that the fillets just don't have. Looking ahead, we have to mainstream nutrition in aquaculture development policies, promote the concept of sustainable food system and value chains that support local communities and ensure that local communities are not impacted by aquaculture development. And finally, we can increase the nutrition of farmed fish. Certainly, the diversity of fish that aquaculture produces is a way to improve nutrition. Different species have different nutrient profiles. However, we can also increase the nutrition of fish through enhanced feeds and even through genetic improvement using traditional genetic technologies to improve the nutritional value of farmed fish. Climate change and COVID-19 were identified by every region as important factors externally impacting the sector. There will be differential impacts on the sector depending on local environment and the capacity to adapt. It also brought on fake news about fish products actually being able to spread the virus. Now, in my opinion, the long-term impacts of this pandemic have not been adequately assessed. For example, in the beginning, China, that had such a powerful aquaculture industry, was severely impacted by that disruption in supply chains. However, now China has pretty much recovered where other areas may not have recovered as quickly. There's also concern about the environment, pollution, habitat degradation. The reviews and the global pandemic pointed out the difference between global events and local events. There was a huge disruption in international supply chains and the international flow of people. With forest fires, which California, where I am, is experiencing right now, we had people from all over the world. A lot of Australians came to help fight California fires. Conversely, when Australia had fires, Californians went to Australia. The pandemic made that not possible. The other thing that all reviews pointed out is that the sector is unprepared for global catastrophes. Looking ahead, I think many of these preceding messages will promote a more resilient and vital sector capable of dealing with external factors. However, the sector does need to improve disaster preparedness and emergency responses, and these should be part of aquaculture planning and management. Good governance is increasing, but again, more is needed. Aquaculture is often not well integrated into national policies. Planning, zoning, environmental impact analysis are needed, and this will help improve sustainability and social acceptance of the sector. Aquaculture is usually couched between multiple ministries, and those ministries often have different priorities. In some areas, primarily Northern America, there's a huge regulatory burden on the sector that is impacting growth. Looking ahead, we need to harmonize policy within ministries and among countries. We need to integrate aquaculture into national development strategies with adequate resources and safeguard. Farmer associations and producer organizations have been shown to work in many areas, and this gives the industry a stronger voice in decision-making and policy-making. We need to communicate the value of aquaculture more widely, and we can strengthen intergovernmental collaboration on aquaculture through the Co2 Subcommittee on Aquaculture and other intergovernmental fora such as NACA and World Fish. Aquaculture stakeholders need to proactively work to improve its image. Aquaculture does suffer from poor public perception in some areas. Social license issues and this poor public perception are restricting the development, and this revolves primarily around environmental concerns, human health aspects, access to resources, land and water, and economic concerns, a lot from capture fisheries that must compete with aquaculture in the marketplace. Looking ahead, emphasize and improve environmental and social sustainability. We can do this by highlighting success stories, using the Sustainable Development Goals, the One Health approach as formats for those stories. We need to develop a communication strategy, including the use of social media, where aquaculture is recognized as a vital and necessary component of the overall food basket. And we need to engage other stakeholders and sectors and recognize that aquaculture is not for all places. There are other legitimate uses of land and water. Finally, now, aquaculture can help achieve Agenda 2030, its Sustainable Development Goals, and other international commitments. Aquaculture at present is directly contributing to a number of Sustainable Development Goals: poverty alleviation, hunger alleviation, better nutrition, better health, better gender equity, better employment, and sustainable production, both in marine and land-based resources, and helping deal with the impacts of a changing climate. Indirectly, aquaculture is contributing to education, the production of clean water, excuse me, innovation, equity, urban development, and establishing partnerships. Each region and country will have opportunities, advantages, and challenges in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. The goals have given us a holistic way of looking at the sector. This is a new way of viewing, promoting, and analyzing food systems that look beyond tons produced and focus instead on positive outcomes for local communities in the form of nutrition, livelihoods, and food security. Looking ahead, we need to assess and enable aquaculture development in terms of direct and indirect implement of those SDGs. I think we need to embrace these new analyses and metrics, and these should be pursued by policymakers and industry along with FAO, NACA, and we can monitor the sector such that human, plant, and animal and environmental health are prioritized along with economic and social viability. Again, that's moving past kilos and dollars produced and looking at real impacts at a local level. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention. It has been a great pleasure working with the authors of those regional reviews and FAO staff in synthesizing this information that I've presented in these last few minutes. Thank you very much. And I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Devin. That was a wonderful presentation, very comprehensive. And we're running ahead of time, but that means that we'll have a little bit of extra time at the end for a few treats. So wait and see what we've got coming up. Very importantly, I would like to welcome our next speaker, Matthias Holwert of the Food and Agriculture Organization, who will present the Shanghai Declaration. It's a major output of this conference. Matthias, please share your presentation and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I will share my screen. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon from wherever you connect with us today, and a very good evening to all of you in-person participants in Shanghai. I have been requested by the International Program Committee of this global conference on aquaculture to deliver a speech on the Shanghai Declaration, which I have accepted with a great pleasure and with great honor, because really it's on your behalf, on behalf of the participants to this global conference, that I'm giving this presentation today. Indeed, the Shanghai Declaration, like its predecessors, the Bangkok Declaration and Strategy from the Millennium year 2000, and the Phuket Consensus from 10 years ago, are declarations prepared by the participants to these conferences. And this is the process and the path that started well over a year ago and that we have shared with all of you via our website. The Shanghai Declaration was first outlined and developed by an invited group of experts, who in turn were informed by regional and thematic aquaculture reviews commissioned in advance of the global conference and all available online. And we have just heard about that from the previous speaker. Members of its International Organizing Committee and International Program Committee further elaborated the Shanghai Declaration, with FAO and NACA acting as secretariat while providing additional inputs. The advanced draft was then sent to all registered participants and posted online for comments ahead of the conference, which were considered in the final drafting. Now, the Shanghai Declaration is a key output from the conference. It represents a roadmap to optimize the role that aquaculture can play in achieving the 2030 agenda and meeting the pledge of leaving no one behind. The declaration consists of a vision for sustainable aquaculture, 5 overarching commitments, and 10 strategic priorities. The strategic priorities are further elaborated in a call for action, which contains indicative actions to help achieve the vision for sustainable aquaculture. Please note that this Shanghai Declaration is posted and has been posted on the Global Conference website. And by tomorrow, we expect to have it ready for you in all UN languages. Now, in the following slides, let us take a joint closer look at what the declaration entails. Above all, the participants to this conference support a common and transformative vision for an aquaculture sector that leads the way towards more productive, efficient, resilient, climate smart, and socially and environmentally responsible agri-food systems that fulfills its potential to meet the increasing demand for safe, for healthy, for accessible and affordable aquatic food and aquatic products with reduced impacts on the global environment, that contributes to human well-being and helps to eradicate poverty, malnutrition, and hunger. And finally, that matures in an economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable way.
There are five overarching commitments that we consider it essential to achieve our vision and that we would like to see applied for the future development of the sector. First, there is the commitment to promote responsible aquaculture development. And when we say responsible aquaculture, it means we explicitly consider the three dimensions of sustainability in a balanced and in a holistic way. Second, the commitment to promote good aquaculture governance. Here we stress that it is not enough to look at the sector itself, but we need to go beyond that. And some of the key words are integrated, multi-sectoral, well-coordinated, or ecosystem-based. Good governance requires strengthened capacities with strong and effective leadership, but also accountability. And it involves a broad stakeholder engagement from across various disciplines and sectors if it is to be coherent, inclusive, and effective. The third commitment is about strengthening partnerships that will generate and share knowledge, information, and technology. Strengthened partnerships includes the reinvigoration of global development, cooperation, and networking among existing and planned centers of excellence. We recognize that inclusive dialogue platforms, creating and improving information systems and data collection, and facilitating flows of information enable better understanding by everyone of aquaculture's contribution to sustainable development. Modernizing traditional aquaculture with innovative approaches, with digital technologies, capacity development programs, and education and extension activities will unlock employment opportunities. Commitment 4 is about investing in aquaculture innovation, research, and development. And the fact that both private and public investment in aquaculture should be increased, and not only increased, but be at sufficient scale, better facilitated, aligned, and prioritized. And that it should be targeted towards measurable improvements in aquaculture performance throughout the value chain and with a long-term perspective. We recognize that investment targeted at new and innovative technologies, research, and development can unlock the full potential of sustainable aquaculture. Important here is that this investment is not just considered essential to increase production, but that it will help address a range of other issues, such as poverty reduction, nutrition, employment, gender equality, as well as adaptation to and mitigation of the impacts of climate change and other global impacts. The fifth commitment is to create open and transparent communication about sustainable aquaculture. We realize that communication strategies targeted to various audiences are needed to disseminate and promote this declaration and improve the image of aquaculture by highlighting its benefits, but also conveying an accurate image of its potential risks. This can be achieved by engaging in a respectful dialogue between different interest groups through a multi-stakeholder platform approach or similar means. We consider that communication strategies should aim to increase the transparency and the credibility of the sector and improve knowledge, perceptions, and acceptability of the diverse forms of aquaculture and its products. You also identified the following strategic priorities that are required to accelerate sustainable aquaculture development and its contribution to the SDGs. The first, expand the contribution of aquaculture to sustainable agri-food systems towards nourishing nations and providing healthy, nutrient-rich, and climate-friendly food to people. Now, aquaculture has a role to play in the transformation of current agri-food systems, from feeding people to nourishing people. So emphasizing the importance of nutrition and health as key outcomes of agri-food systems. Aquatic food is recommended as a key component of a diverse and a healthy diet. We know that fish and other aquatic foods are important sources of protein, of essential fatty acids, of micronutrients, especially for the poor and the vulnerable. However, we also know that there are differences in the nutrient composition, including of aquatic foods, as well as in the way these foods are prepared and consumed. Importantly, aquaculture production must be considered as an integral part of the sustainable agri-food systems with intrinsic linkages to capture fisheries and terrestrial agriculture. The second priority is about to integrate aquaculture with the natural environment, with agriculture, capture fisheries, forestry, tourism, renewable energy, and other sectors, and within the agri-food systems for increased resilience. So aquaculture production is exposed to a range of environmental, social, and economic disruptions, both direct ones to on-farm activities and indirect ones to inputs. The ability to respond, to adapt, and to recover to such disruptions is a necessary condition for production resilience. We also know that aquaculture can have negative impacts if it is not managed properly. Good spatial planning and optimal zoning, site selection, area management can reduce the risk of environmental disruption or impact and represent major driving factors for the expansion of the aquaculture sector. In addition, good aquaculture planning can result in higher farm productivity, facilitate better access to and better use of land and water resources, and minimize conflicts with other resource users. Aquaculture systems interact with other food systems, sometimes in synergy and sometimes in competition. And this creates opportunities and risks, requiring a food systems approach to maintaining resilience and sustainability. Strategic priority C is about continually improve the performance of aquaculture and its capacity to minimize impact on and make better use of natural resources and enhance ecosystem services. Now, remarkable gains have been made in improving the efficiency of aquaculture production. However, as aquaculture and other sectors continue to grow, natural resources such as land, water, or raw materials for feed production may degrade or become scarcer, and competition will increase. Therefore, environmentally friendly, resource use efficient, and sustainable aquaculture should be encouraged, with due consideration to ensuring access to food for people and minimizing impacts on the environment. The next strategic priority is to promote aquaculture development approaches that conserve and improve ecosystems and biodiversity, and that reduce the carbon intensity of agri-food production systems. And this is a related strategic priority. Many forms of aquaculture can provide ecosystem services and contribute to conservation, although the value and roles of these are rarely well recognized. On the other hand, aquaculture systems also depend on a variety of ecosystem services and therefore require healthy aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems. We note that aquaculture accounts only for a rather small proportion of the environmental impacts of agriculture, but nonetheless, it must aim to minimize land use, safeguard biodiversity, reduce consumptive water use, and substantially reduce effluents, wastes, and greenhouse gas emissions, just like the other components of the global agri-food system. The next strategic priority is to protect and develop aquaculture-based livelihoods and promote decent work and socially responsible enterprises. Now, this is a big priority, dealing with people and dealing with livelihoods. The positive impacts of aquaculture are well recognized, and the economic, the environmental, social, and cultural benefits and traditions, as for example, in the globally important agricultural heritage systems that we heard about earlier in the video, should be accessible to all and not driven only by the pursuit of production goals and economic efficiency, but also seen as a means to create well-being in all the sustainability dimensions. You are concerned that if aquaculture is poorly regulated, managed, or planned, it may exacerbate historical inequalities and bring about negative impacts. Discriminatory access to resources and services, may it be space on land or sea, seed supply, credit, and finance, undermines the development of livelihoods based on aquaculture. You point to the fact that women and small-scale farmers are most likely to be disadvantaged as aquaculture enterprises scale up and develop, having less access to ownership of assets. In addition, as is the case in all agricultural sectors and beyond, in fact, there is scope for the improvement of decent work conditions in the aquaculture sector. Strategic priority F is about to ensure women's empowerment by enhancing women's full access to equal opportunities through gender transformative policies. Now, there are systemic factors that disadvantage women in economic and social structures, and those have also applied to the development of aquaculture. Women have not benefited equally because their business and employment opportunities are circumscribed by, among other aspects, the lack of sex disaggregated data for use in planning and monitoring, and aquaculture policies that do not distinguish different women's and men's needs in development. The causes of gender blindness are rooted largely in development policies and research. Discriminatory legislation traditions and attitudes, and women's lack of access to decision-making. Of critical importance is the extent to which rural people, in particular small-scale family farmers, youth, and women, have secure and equitable human and labor rights, access to knowledge, personal security, health, essential services, to markets and resources, control over their livelihood through decent business and work opportunities, and access to diverse and nutritious food. More information is needed on women's current engagement in aquaculture and what makes women lose or retain control over their activities, depending on the scale, the intensity, and the value of aquaculture enterprises. Overcoming gender blindness, empowering women in aquaculture, and making the development of aquaculture gender transformative is the responsibility of everyone in the sector. Strategic priority G is about to promote opportunities for young women and men. Aquaculture is not always the first choice of livelihood by youth due to political, economic, technical, and social factors, limited access to space and water, financial services, markets, limited involvement in policy dialogues on issues that affect youth, and insufficient access to knowledge, information, and education. Our knowledge on how these barriers play out, on youth's motivation to join and partake in aquaculture is incomplete. Youth also face a near gerontocracy, and young women's access to educational opportunities and resources is even more prescribed than that of young men. Strategic priority H is to promote indigenous peoples' participation in aquaculture. And this priority notes that indigenous peoples' right to food is linked and inseparable from their rights to land, territories, natural resources, culture, and self-determination. Sustainable aquaculture provides healthy, nutritious, and also culturally appropriate food. And it could represent an opportunity for socioeconomic development by indigenous peoples. Indigenous people might benefit, if they so desire, from equitable access to aquaculture resources and value chains, and equal participation and representation in policymaking processes associated with aquaculture development. Strategic priority I is to prepare for and potentially mitigate impacts from global crises, such as climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and pandemics. This ninth priority is about global crises, such as climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic, which have disrupted supply chains and markets and caused human suffering and death around the world. Supply chains and markets are now being modified in response to the pandemic, and world experts believe that the next 10 years will be crucial in addressing the impacts of the climate crisis in order to avoid irreversible damage to the environment. Aquaculture, because of its diversity of farming systems, of species and environments, can adapt to market forces, has more opportunities for lower carbon footprint that can lessen or mitigate the impacts of the global climate crisis, and can help the overall food supply system be more resilient to other impacts, such as natural disasters and human conflict. And this brings us to the 10th and last strategic priority: the compilation of accurate, relevant, and timely data facilitates monitoring, comparisons, and analyses of status and trends that are essential for the responsible development of aquaculture and the sustainable utilization of the resources it requires. Accurate assessments of the status and progress of aquaculture support governments and other relevant stakeholders in formulating better informed policies, strategies, and plans, and in the monitoring and reporting of aquaculture's contributions to economic development, to food security, and to poverty alleviation. Dear participants, this declaration, your declaration, clearly shows how aquaculture, with its impressive growth over the past decades, has earned its rightful place and has earned wide recognition for its contribution to food security, to poverty reduction, to rural development and economic growth, as well as food system transformation. And all of us have a stake in this. The declaration provides a clear pathway, and we hope that this conference will stimulate further discussion and insights into how we can best implement it for the benefit of all. The Friends of the Shanghai Declaration have prepared a solid guiding document, a compass, if you like, for future development, for policy and planning in aquaculture. Hopefully 10 years from now, we will be able to say that with a baseline of 2020, and with this compass in hand, we ensured the best possible contribution of aquaculture to the Sustainable Development Goals, leaving no one behind. In this regard, please take note that we invited a number of organizations and networks to submit pledges and statements of support to the Shanghai Declaration. And I'm pleased to say that we received many. Tomorrow, we will hear from some of them during our adoption ceremony, and we look forward to seeing you all there. So in closing, let me thank you. Thank you for your constructive engagement that led to this declaration. And thank you for your trust and confidence in us, the Conference Secretariat, and in whose name I speak when I say that it was a great pleasure and honor to serve you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthias. As you said, the preparation of the declaration was a joint and concerted effort by the participants ahead of the conference. Tomorrow we'll have a special session where the participants of the GCA adopt the Shanghai Declaration and organisations provide statements and pledges of support. We've had 3 valuable keynote presentations today that set the scene for this conference. Professor Tang described a long history of aquaculture development in China. He discussed science-based industry expansion, and proven and diverse technologies in use in China, noting the substantial contribution that China makes to global aquaculture production. The diversity of aquaculture species and technology was also recognised by our second speaker, Devin, noting that not all systems will suit all countries. However, we all have valuable parts to play. This was followed by Matthias sharing highlights of the Shanghai Declaration with a transformative vision for global aquaculture. Achieving the vision will require commitments and strategic actions from us all in the aquaculture industry. And joining us today, we have 500 delegates present in person in Shanghai and about 670 delegates online. This is a valuable event to be together face-to-face and virtually to share valuable, sustainable aquaculture concepts. We take note of the questions that have been left in the chat, and we will try to address them over the next day and a half, but will not have the opportunity to address them here and now. So before we finish this session today, I have a few quick words and then we're going to have a video. So firstly, we will return at 2100 Shanghai time to continue the plenary presentations. That is in 90 minutes time. We will be in the same room, so join the same webinar with the same login information that you used to be here right now. The next session will be moderated by Maria Celia Portela. Maria Celia is a professor at the Aquaculture Center of Sao Paulo State University in Brazil with active international collaborations. Professor Portela is a past president of both the World Aquaculture Society, WAS, and the Latin American and Caribbean chapter of WAS. And as president-elect of WAS, I have very big shoes to fill in the work that she and other past presidents have done. So the third point that I would like to make is that this room will stay open during the break, but it will not be monitored. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to register for one of the 3 parallel thematic review webinars for later today. See the program online at www.aquaculture2020.org for details of the sessions and instructions on how to register. During the break, we invite you to visit the poster website. We have 113 posters spread across the 9 themes, covering many interesting topics. We will hear from some of the poster presenters tomorrow, so we encourage you to have a look at them before then. Before we leave for this break, we have a short video from some of our poster authors. The GCA organisers had planned to support travel for several youth researchers and young career professionals to be in person in Shanghai, but that has become impossible, unfortunately. So this is a video from our youth scholarship winners. Secretariat, would you please play the video and let's watch together.
We wanted to welcome everyone in Shanghai. In fact, we had a youth scholarship fund to help bring youth from developing countries. Unfortunately, with the COVID-19 pandemic, this wasn't possible. So instead, let's see our youth scholars, where they're from. Thank you to all the post authors, and we hope to see you in person soon. We want.
What a great group of winners. So congratulations to all of them. So now we'll take a break and we'll see you back here with Maria Celia Portela as the moderator at 2100, which is actually in about 110 minutes. So enjoy your break, enjoy your meal, and we'll see you back again soon. Thank you.